Okay, so you're ready to dive into data and AI for your business, right? Well, you've come to the right place. We're going deep on this one, breaking down BizDury's guide, Data plus AI Strategy. Unlock business value faster. Think of this as your shortcut to cut through the noise.
And the interesting thing is, this guide, it goes beyond just the tech. It's really about how businesses need to change how they think, to thrive in this whole data-driven world we're in.
Yeah, it definitely feels like using data and AI isn't really optional anymore. It's almost like table stakes just to compete these days.
Totally. In fact, BizDury even says that companies who get this right, like really nail their data strategy, they can outperform their competitors, like way outperform them by up to 20%. I mean, that's huge.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, the stakes are high. But this guide, it doesn't just kind of drop that on you and leave you hanging. It gives a real framework. And here's the thing I found interesting. It's not all just algorithms and code. They talk about these three pillars for what they call data and AI maturity. And surprisingly, it's very human-centered.
Absolutely. They really hit hard on trust, people, and technology. And it's the trust part that I think gets missed a lot.
Okay, so break down trust for me in this context.
Yeah.
What do they mean exactly?
It's about trusting your data, knowing that it's accurate and complete, that it's consistent, because like the guide says, if you've got even a small error rate in your data, it can really throw off your AI, like significantly.
Oh, I see. So it's like you wouldn't build, I don't know, like a skyscraper on a foundation with cracks everywhere. You need a good, solid base.
Precisely. And that's where data governance comes in, and organization and quality control. BizStory's point is, if you don't have those, your AI projects, they're basically set up to fail.
Got it. So trust in your data is like step one. What about the people part of this? We're not talking about turning every employee into like a data scientist, are we?
No, not at all. It's more about what they call democratizing data, which sounds kind of jargony, but it just means making data accessible to everyone, understandable no matter what their, technical background is.
So instead of data being this like secret language only a few people speak, it's about making sure everyone can use it to make better decisions, whatever their role is.
Exactly. The guide even gives some examples of like training programs or how a shift in a company's culture can give people the tools they need to actually be data-driven.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And then, of course, there's the technology piece. What's the guide's take on that?
They're big on choosing the right tech, of course, but also future-proofing. So that means things like cloud solutions, making sure your systems integrate well, and this thing they call minimizing technical debt.
Technical debt. Is that kind of like when you let dishes pile up in the sink? You know you should deal with it, but...
Yeah, it's a lot like that. It's about avoiding those Band-Aid solutions that end up costing you more later. BizStory's point is invest in flexible tech, scalable tech from the get-go, and it pays off.
Okay, so we've got our three pillars, the trust, the people, the technology. But how do you put that into action? They have an 8-step framework, right?
They do, and it all starts with something that seems obvious, but people miss it all the time, defining your vision. Like, what are your objectives? What are you trying to achieve with AI?
I can see how people skip that part. AI is exciting. You want to just jump in and build stuff.
Right, but BizDury's point is you have to step back, ask, what problem are we solving with AI? They give this example of a retailer using it for personalized recommendations versus a manufacturer using it for like predictive maintenance on their equipment. Totally different uses, driven by totally different goals.
So you have to know what success looks like for you before you even think about the tech. What's the next step?
So once you've got that vision, then it's about building that solid data foundation, the thing we were talking about before. This is where governance comes in, quality control, all those trust elements.
Right, got to make sure the data feeding your AI is good or your insights will be flawed from the start.
Exactly. And they're really insistent on this in the guide. Don't even bother with fancy AI models, they say, until you've got this part figured out.
So we've got our vision, our solid data foundation. This is where we get to the fun part, right? Building the AI solutions.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
But even here, BizDury has this really measured approach, which I think is smart.
Oh, so no jumping in the deep end right away. Tell me more.
Right? They say start small, prototype your ideas, prove that they work before you go big. It's much more strategic that way.
Makes sense. Dip your toes in before you, cannonball into the pool. But it's not just about building AI just to say we did. What about the ethics of all of this?
Huge, and the guide doesn't shy away from it. BizDury really emphasizes responsible AI, making sure it's fair, it's transparent, how these systems get built and used.
Feels like with AI, we're in uncharted territory in a lot of ways, so thinking through those implications early on is huge.
For sure. Can't be an afterthought. Now, once you have your prototype and you've looked at it from the ethical side, then it's about how do you integrate this into your business.
Right, this is where the rubber meets the road, making it a part of how you work every day.
And they talk a lot about change management here. Their point is the best AI tool in the world is useless if your team won't use it, right?
So it's not enough to just have the tech, you've got to bring people along and show them how to actually use it. That makes a ton of sense. Okay, so we've got the vision, the data part, the use cases, and integration. What about the other steps in the framework? Can you give us a rundown?
Definitely. BizStory also dives into choosing your tech stack, so like the actual tools, and they focus a lot on systems that work well together, that are easy to use. They even talk about low-code and no-code stuff, which is interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Makes it so you don't have to be a coder to build AI, right?
Makes it more accessible,
Yeah.
which I think is great. And of course, the people and culture aspect, which keeps coming up.
It does feel like a big theme with them.
Yeah, they're all about investing in your people. Hire data scientists, obviously, but also training your existing team.
So is everyone going to coding boot camp now?
Not quite. It's more about data literacy, data visualization, just basic analysis skills. Give everyone the confidence to work with data.
I love it. Everyone's speaking the same language, data-wise. That's powerful. Okay, but what about the impact? AI can get expensive. How do we make sure it's worth the investment?
Such a good question. And the guide has a whole section on measuring ROI, return on investment, being really clear on your goals from the start, and tracking how you're doing.
So no just saying, hey, we're doing AI, it must be working. You need proof.
Exactly. They're big on what they call SMART goals. So that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
It's like putting it in your GPS, you know? Gotta know where you're going.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And then use dashboards, monitoring tools, all that to track if you're actually hitting your targets.
So it's a constant feedback loop. Watch how it's going, make adjustments along the way.
Exactly. And they say, be ready to show that ROI to the people who matter, the stakeholders. Prove it's bringing value, whether that's cost savings or happier customers, whatever it is.
You gotta have the receipt.
You do. Performance measurement is key. It's not just about tracking numbers to track numbers. It's about using them to make smart decisions, to keep your whole data and AI strategy on track.
Awesome. Okay. We've covered so much, the tech, the culture, the measuring results. What's the final piece of this whole data and AI strategy puzzle?
That last piece is all about making sure it lasts, that it can grow. So we're talking about scalability and being ready for the future. It's about making sure that what you're building can evolve and expand as your business needs change,
So taking those small wins and being able to like roll them out big time to the whole organization.
Exactly. It's kind of like if you have a recipe, right?
Yeah.
And it works great in your kitchen, but can you scale it up to feed like a whole, a whole stadium full of people? You got to make sure it still works.
Love that analogy. But it's not just about making it bigger, is it? It's about being able to handle whatever gets thrown at you, right? New problems, new opportunities, all that.
Exactly. And that's why BizStory is big on these modular systems. So
Yeah.
you can adapt them, reconfigure them as you go.
So like building blocks that you can rearrange and build new stuff with as you need to.
Exactly. Legos for your data and AI. That's the idea. You want to be able to swap things out easy, add new features, that kind of thing. Which brings us to the future readiness part. Can't just be thinking about today, got to be thinking about what's next.
So having your finger on the pulse of what's new and what's coming, stuff that might change everything we think we know about data and AI.
Right. They want businesses to really stay on top of things, like be aware of stuff like quantum computing, edge AI, and then there's this whole generative AI thing, which is...
Okay, hit me with those one by one, because some of that is over my head. Quantum computing, that just sounds futuristic.
It is. But it has the potential to totally revolutionize data and AI. Quantum computers, they process information differently, like completely differently. They can tackle problems that our regular computers just can't, even the super powerful ones.
So a whole new level of power, processing-wise.
Exactly. Imagine being able to, analyze huge data sets instantly, or build AI that learns way, way faster. That's what we could be talking about.
Feels like we're getting into sci-fi territory. What about this edge AI thing?
So edge AI is about taking the AI processing, and instead of it being in the cloud, you bring it to the edge, closer to where the data is coming from. So like, think of your phone, or those smart sensors you see everywhere, or even like self-driving cars.
So instead of sending all that data to some server somewhere, you analyze it right there on the spot.
Yep, which means things happen faster. And for some stuff, like those self-driving cars or in factories, that speed is super important.
Makes sense. I feel like edge AI is going to be huge with this whole Internet of Things thing, with billions of devices all collecting data.
It is big time. And then you've got generative AI, which is already out there doing some crazy stuff. It can actually create new content based on what it's learned. So I'm talking like text, images, music, even code.
Hold on, so AI that's not just analyzing data, it's making new stuff.
Yep. And people are using it for like marketing, design, even scientific research. Imagine like generating a prototype of a product,
Yeah.
but it's all done by AI. Or making those super targeted ads, but like way more personalized than we've ever seen. That's generative AI.
It's almost like AI is becoming, I don't know, creative.
Yeah, it's a big shift. But with all this power comes a lot of responsibility, right? How do we make sure AI is used for good, that it doesn't cause harm?
Right, because the potential is huge, but it could go either way.
And Bizdery talks about this a lot. They're all about responsible AI. So making sure the systems are fair, transparent, that we hold them accountable, and thinking about the impact on society as a whole, and taking steps to make sure we're using it for good, not for harm.
So it's bigger than just, building cool tech. It's about how that tech shapes the world.
Exactly. It's on all of us, right?
Yeah.
From the people building the AI to the businesses using it to us as individuals interacting with, we have to be mindful.
Okay, so we've talked about these future trends, but let's get a bit more practical. The guide goes into detail about the technology stack, right? The actual tools companies need to make all of this happen.
Yeah, they break it down into a few key parts, starting with the data infrastructure, like the foundation of everything.
So where we store and manage all that data we're collecting, are we talking about those like massive data warehouses?
Those are definitely a part of it, especially for structured data.
Yeah.
The neat stuff that fits in rows and columns.
Right.
But they also talk about data lakes, which are a whole other thing.
Data lakes. Okay, I'm intrigued. What are those exactly?
Think of it like this huge pool of data, but it can hold anything. Social media posts, sensor data from, I don't know, a factory, audio files, whatever. Stuff that doesn't fit neatly into those rows and columns.
So it's like the Wild West of data storage, just dump it all in there.
Pretty much. And it's getting more and more common as companies have to deal with all these different kinds of data.
Okay, so we've got the data stored somehow. Now we got to make sense of it, right? That's where the data processing and analysis tools come in.
Right. So these tools help you sift through that raw data and pull out useful insights. The guide mentions things like Apache Spark, which is great for huge data sets, and the more traditional SQL stuff for analysis.
I'm sensing a theme here. Flexibility,
Yeah,
being able to handle massive amounts of data and all those different types.
you got it. And you can't forget about integration, making sure all your different systems can talk to each other, like your customer relationship management, your marketing tools, all of it.
Otherwise, you just have a bunch of data silos, right?
Exactly. Isolated pockets of information. It's like having puzzle pieces, but no picture.
Right. So you need tools to make that data flow, to connect everything.
And there are plenty of tools for that. Things like APIs, platforms like Salesforce's Data Cloud, they all help make that data move smoothly.
So if you can connect, let's say, your sales data, your marketing data, and your website analytics, then you can get a much clearer picture of what's happening and who your customers are, right?
Exactly. Bizdery's point is that connectedness is crucial to making smart decisions. It's not enough to have the data. You have to be able to access it and use it across your whole business.
This is all sounding really complex. Is this stuff only for the big companies, the ones with huge IT budgets?
Not anymore. Actually, the guide highlights this trend of low-code and no-code platforms. They're making data and AI much more accessible, even for smaller businesses.
So you don't need a whole team of programmers to build your own AI?
Nope. These platforms have these really user-friendly interfaces, drag and drop visual stuff. Even if you're not a coder, you can do some pretty cool things with data.
It's that democratization idea again, making this stuff available to everyone. I like it.
It's a big deal. BizStory's argument is, this is how data and AI become truly essential to every business, no matter how big or small. It's not just for the tech giants anymore.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've talked tech, but we can't forget about the human side of this. Even with all these tools, it's still people who make this stuff work, right?
100%. And there's a whole section in the guide about people and culture.
I was hoping we'd circle back to this. What do they say about finding the right people and building a culture that actually uses data well?
Well, investing in your people is huge, they say. So hiring data scientists, obviously, but also training the people you already have.
So are we sending everyone to, like, coding boot camps now?
No, Not necessarily. It's more about giving people the basic skills.
Yeah.
Data literacy, so they understand what it is. Data visualization, so they can present it clearly. Basic analysis skills, so they can make sense of it.
So everyone's speaking the same language, data-wise, no more like, what is this spreadsheet even saying?
Right. No more of that. And that takes a cultural shift, too. BizStory talks about how important the leadership is in this. They need to be the champions for data. Make decisions based on it. Encourage people to try new things, even if they fail.
So it's got to come from the top down. Build a culture where people feel safe to explore and experiment with data.
Exactly. Make it okay to ask questions, challenge assumptions, use data to come up with new ideas, innovations.
That's a great environment to work in, I bet. But let's be real, data and AI can be expensive. How do you know if it's actually working, if it's worth the investment?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And the guide talks a lot about measuring ROI, being very specific about your goals from the start, and tracking your progress.
So no more of that, we're doing AI, so things must be good kind of thinking.
Nope. You need to prove it. They're big on SMART goals, which we talked about earlier. Specific, measurable, all of that.
It's like setting a destination in your GPS. Otherwise, you're just driving around aimlessly.
Exactly. And then you need tools to track how you're doing. Dashboards, reports, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
You want to be able to see clearly if you're hitting your targets.
So you're constantly checking, making adjustments along the way.
Right. It's a feedback loop. And being able to show that ROI to your stakeholders, the people who are investing in this, prove that it's actually delivering value.
Whether that's saving money, making more money, happier customers, whatever your goal was at the start.
Exactly. Performance measurement, it's critical. Not just for the sake of having numbers, but for actually using those numbers to make smarter decisions.
I like it. Okay, so we've covered a ton. Building the right tech, building the right culture, measuring the results. What's the final piece of the puzzle for a successful data and AI strategy?
The final piece is all about ensuring that it lasts, that it can grow. We're talking about scalability and being ready for the future. So it's like making sure that what you built, like those pilot projects that worked, can actually be used by the whole organization, right?
Yeah, like if you find a recipe that works, can you scale it up to feed like a whole army? You got to make sure it still tastes good, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's not just about size. It's also about being flexible. What happens when there's a new problem or a new opportunity pops up that you didn't see coming?
Got to be ready to adapt, pivot, all that.
Right. And that's why they're so big on these modular systems.
Yeah.
You can change them up easily as you need to.
It's like those building blocks, right? You can build one thing, then break it apart and build something totally different.
That's it. Legos for your data and AI. And that kind of leads into the future readiness part. You can't get stuck in the now. You got to be thinking about what's next.
So being aware of those big trends that could totally change the game, like how we even think about data and AI.
Right. Things that might seem kind of out there now, but they're coming.
Mm-hmm.
Like quantum computing, edge AI. And then there's this whole generative AI thing, which is...
Okay, give me the rundown on those. Some of that is a little over my head. Quantum computing, that sounds like something out of Star Trek.
It kind of is. But it has the potential to completely revolutionize data and AI. Like completely. Quantum computers work totally differently. They can solve problems that our normal computers just can't, even the supercomputers.
So we're talking like next level processing power.
Way next level. Think about analyzing huge amounts of data instantly, or AI that can learn so fast it's mind-blowing. That's the kind of stuff we could see.
Wow, that's wild. What about this edge AI thing?
So edge AI is all about moving the processing power. Instead of being in the cloud somewhere, you move it to the edge of the network. So closer to where the data is actually being collected, like think your phone, or those sensors they're putting in everything these days.
So instead of sending all that data to a server, you just analyze it right there on the spot.
Exactly. And for some things like self-driving cars or those factory robots, that speed is really important. You can't be waiting around for data to go back and forth.
Makes sense. And it seems like edge AI is going to be huge for this whole Internet of Things thing with all these smart devices collecting data.
Oh yeah, it's a perfect fit. And then there's generative AI, which is already doing some pretty crazy stuff. It can actually create new content like text, images, music, even code, and it does it based on what it's learned from data.
Hold on, so AI, that's not just analyzing data, it's like making new things.
Yep, and people are using it for all sorts of things. Marketing, design, even scientific research. Like imagine generating a product prototype, but it's done by AI. Or super personalized ads that are tailored to you, like way beyond what we see now. That's generative AI.
That's kind of freaky, but also really cool. But with all this power comes a lot of responsibility, right? How do we make sure this stuff is used for good, not for, evil?
Exactly, and the guy talks a lot about that. Responsible AI, it's huge. So making sure the systems are fair, that they're transparent, that we hold them accountable, and thinking about the impact on society and making sure we're using it to make things better, not worse.
So it's bigger than just building cool tech. It's about making sure that tech is used in a way that aligns with our values.
Yeah, it's on all of us, I think, from the people building it to the companies using it to us as individuals interacting with it every day.
We got to be mindful. Okay, well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive. Thanks for walking us through it.
My pleasure. I think the key takeaway here is that data and AI, they're not just tools. They're like forces that are going to reshape how we live and work. So we got to be ready.
And that's exactly what this Biz Story Guide helps you do. It's like a roadmap for navigating this new landscape.
Exactly. It gives you the framework, the insights, the steps you need to take.
So, to our listeners, if you're looking to unlock the power of data and AI for your business, I highly recommend checking out Biz Story's guide. It's called Data Plus AI Strategy: Unlock Business Value Faster. You can find a link in the show notes.
And one final thought. This stuff can seem overwhelming, but don't let that stop you. Start small, experiment, learn as you go.
Yeah, don't be afraid to fail, because even failures can teach you a lot in this space.
Exactly. It's all about learning and adapting.
So to all you data and AI enthusiasts out there, keep exploring, keep pushing the boundaries, and most importantly, keep believing in the power of data and AI to create a better future. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.